Trenton Woodley, ladders on tables, X hands like houses. How's it going today, man?
It's going awesome, yeah. Audio challenges and internet connections notwithstanding, we're doing great.
Glad to hear it, man. Um, so I mean, you just released Ground Dweller Remade, which is
Yep.
your first release in 3 years.
Yes.
Like, yeah, last release was Hurricane, right?
Yeah.
So
End of 2022. So
yeah, so how's it been? Like, how's the reception been?
yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, look, this is something. This is a project that I kind of did for me first and foremost. Like, not to be kind of all artisty about it, but like, initially it came about as this is something I proposed to the band back in COVID. I was like, look, I think people have always wanted a redux, like a bit of a second look at Ground Dweller. I think Cam did an amazing job with the original of kind of getting everything that we threw at him into something that was listenable. But I think the technology of the time, combined just with the density of the composition of the record, like our original thing was like, oh, this part's not feeling right. Let's throw something else in it. The more ingredients you have in a recipe, the harder it is to get those to kind of harmonize and balance. And I think, there's no knock to the original other than just the sound of it didn't really age well. I think a lot of bands kind of did that, had that sound coming out of Chango, like, Cam's thing. And I think, once people hear enough of something, they want to hear something different, even if they don't think they do sometimes. I think, shifts and, trends and things like that change. So, yeah, it just felt like something that we should do at some point, and COVID seemed like the perfect time, but didn't really kind of get much traction with the rest of the band on that. So it kind of got left on the wayside, but I always felt like something I wanted to redo. And when it became apparent that I wasn't part of the band's future, I just wanted to find a way to do something to kind of remind myself what I could do to kind of, go back to the start, to kind of rebuild forward again. It's not about going back to my roots and staying there. It's just about like kind of undoing, years of kind of creative habits that I developed around the particular creative shape of Hands Like Houses, which we were very different people. That's kind of what made our melting pot work. But at the same time, as we all got kind of drifted further apart in terms of our tastes and influences, it became harder to find that phantom center over the years. And so, while I'm really proud of everything that came through that, I'd kind of developed a lot of creative habits kind of around that very specific shape of, function and dysfunction. And that was a really hard thing to figure out who I was separate from that. So I figured going back to the start, kind of the stuff that inspired me to get into music in the first place, and just a chance to kind of make a record without having to write a record, even if that was just a couple of songs. Like originally the plan was to pilot with Lion Skin and maybe Cruel Men, Cowards and Liars, and then kind of, if that went well, then kind of work on the rest. But I kind of got caught up with, I guess, some of the logistical and legal side of separating out from a business, and that kind of got caught with lawyers and, kind of some, I guess, debates back and forth with the band about what belonged to who and how that all worked. And I just ended up with like a lot of kind of, I don't know, bad vibes that I needed to do something productive with. So I kind of just threw myself into just doing it. I'm like, well, I'm this far, I may as well keep going. And yeah, it's been just really validating to kind of see people get the vision behind it, like whether that's through the transparency, whether that's through just, I don't know, what the record meant to people in the first place, just hearing something again, hearing a fresh and familiar take on something that is quite familiar to a lot of people, sometimes quite deeply for people like Tom, for example. Working with him was awesome. So anyway.
You answered my next question, which is like, why did you want to revisit like Ground Dweller,
Mm.
like being separated from the band and your first project being that. So um, now it's obviously not just you and the band. Bahador, is that how you say it?
Yep. Yeah, Bahador Bahani. So
Yeah.
he's a US born Kiwi New Zealander with yeah, kind of Persian parents and background. So yeah, he's legendary dude, absolute character. And I connected with him through doing a guest vocal a few years back with his old band. He kind of had an acrimonious sort of split from them as well, which came out as we started talking. And I learned a bit more about that situation for him. And we kind of talked about each of our own experiences of separating from our bands. But the reason I reached out in the first place is because he was kind of running the show for a music video that I did with them and for them on that. And he kind of coordinated that shoot remotely. And I don't know, there was just something about the way that he worked that like fit my kind of chaos. I'm very much a process person. I mean, my day job is kind of, understanding the way work happens and then like creative work happens and how that, solves for business problems and user problems and kind of syncing that all together. And kind of seeing his process, the way he worked, kind of clicked. And I knew he was a great guitarist because I'd seen him cover like The Art Is Murder and stuff on his Instagram. And I was just trying to think like of people that could do this record justice, particularly with the lead side, because there is a lot of nuance in the guitar leads and just, it needs to be very tight rhythms, and the less editing I have to do from a producer standpoint, the better, because I was still figuring out what I'm good at and what I suck at. And that's why I have a guitarist and nothing else, because I can program drums, I can play bass, I can sing, I can figure out keyboards as long as I have like literal months to get through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, guitar, like I have lots of guitars, I just don't play them very well. So I needed someone to come in and fill that gap in the record, and he just, it just kind of worked well. He's got this whole suite of skills around like video production, the kind of Unreal engine that he uses for his architecture job. Like he does he learned Unreal Engine to do like 3D walkthroughs of spaces he designed as an architect for his clients, and then we kind of just learned more about like animation and kind of world building. And there's still a long way for us each to go in kind of learning that platform, but it's been fun working together on that. And it's a good team. So it's kind of a way to practice being a band without having to like be a band fully and just try it on, you know what I mean? So yeah, I guess this whole thing is about kind of setting up a workflow and a team and a creative relationship that we can kind of take into something new in due time.
So the actual project name, so Ladders on Tables, I kind of got a bit of a backstory here, but would you like to elaborate on where that came from?
Kingdom Leaks, apparently, which I've learned more recently.
Kingdom Leaks.
So for those that are a bit younger or maybe not keyed into the nuances of the post-hardcore world of back in the day, before streaming, physical albums were a thing. People got excited. They wanted to hear the record straight away. The best way to do that was to pirate it, so download it from torrent sites or whatever. And Kingdom Leaks was a site that basically would leak records early, and people were so excited to hear it, they go and do it, which was good from a promotional standpoint, but kind of shit it kind of really cut into one of the places bands could actually make money, which was physical album sales. And so yeah, they weren't everyone's favorite people, but there was a community built around that, because at the end of the day, that community formed around excitement to hear records that weren't out yet. Like there's a kind of a cool feeling with that. So anyway, that site started in their like little internal forum chat. They just started, they kind of, I don't know, pretended, made a leak, made a joke, somehow shared that we were going to have a new song called Ladders on Tables coming out next week. No such song existed. We were in the studio to work on our, Unimagined album at the time, or somewhere in between those. And we're like, we're working on new music, but where the hell did this come from? And so, yeah, it just, it's a really dumb band name, only marginally more dumb than Hands Like Houses, but it just felt like there was some thematic link for the same reason that it kind of stuck with our community at the time. Like, people thought it was real because Hands Like Houses, Ladders on Tables, that sounds like a thing, 3 words. Just when I was just trying to figure out what to call this project, it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of homage and nod to people that had stuck around for the long haul and remembered that from the first time around. So, yeah, that's the story. It's not a good one, but it's a story.
Yeah, admittedly, I used Kingdom Leaks a lot when I was in high school.
Look, I did too. I got albums on my iPod Classic that I got from there, because that was the only way I could kind of get hold of the digital files back then. Being in Australia, physical CDs for a lot of these bands weren't actually available easily outside the US.
So the first batch of tunes you guys released was Cruel Men, Cowards, and Liars with Lion Skin for the prelude bit. So Cruel Men, Cowards, and Liars obviously wasn't on the original album. So what's kind of the story there? From my understanding, it was like a demo, right?
Okay, so there's this whole weird overlap here. So there was always a song called Cruel Men, Cowards, and Liars. Cruel Men, Cowards, and Liars was never 100. Because there was an old demo of 100 that got leaked, uploaded to YouTube, but labeled as Cruel Men, Cowards, and Liars. So that was just confusing for us. We don't know why that happened, how it happened, but somehow just got mislabeled in this leaked upload. But Cruel Man, Cowards and Liars was always its own thing. It was a song that was separate to 100, but it sounded like, I mean, it's quite a similar song, same key, same chord progression in the chorus. I get the comparison, but that's the reason Cruel Man got cut, because we recorded it with Cameron when we did the first 5 songs that made up, we did an EP with Cameron first, and then all the labels told us, oh, we need a full album, so go write some more songs and make a full album. So we went back and did it a year later. So Cruel Man was part of the first set of songs that we took over. But as we were filling out the album, we were like, oh, there's 2 of these songs that are almost the same. Cam liked 100 better, so we cut Cruel Man, Cowards and Liars. I didn't like it, but it was a creative decision made at the time, and fair enough. I always felt like Cruel Man was always the more realised. It was the song I was more proud of lyrically. 100 always felt a bit clipped and kind of a lot of heart thoughts in there, which, it's probably something we'll come to later. But that song has always existed. It's always been a demo on my iPod not even a demo. It was a mixed song. It just wasn't on the record. And we sent that out to a handful of people that supported us, donated when our van broke down in the middle of Arizona in one of our first tours. And that helped us out. So we sent it out to them and just said, just please don't share this. We want this to be for you. And it never really leaked beyond that, which was pretty cool. So coming back around, I always wanted that song to see this light of day. So it just seemed like a sensible way to kind of give an old classic like Lion Skin, but then pair it with something that people more or less, like 99% of people wouldn't have heard before. So pairing that up just felt like a cool way to introduce the project, what I was trying to do with it, and, in theory, pilot it. But that obviously didn't happen, and because I just kept going, I didn't stop. And now I've got a full album.
Funny you mentioned that, because I was like mentioning on Twitter when I was saying, if anyone has any questions for you or whatever, someone straight up said that Cruel Man, Cowards and Liars is the demo of 100.
I get the confusion, but yeah.
And you obviously brought along like Tom and Hance as features on the record. I know you and Tom are close, but how did you know that you wanted these 2 to be a part of the project, and how that kind of come together?
I thought it was a way to kind of, I guess, acknowledge and kind of reconnect with friends from that sort of time and chapter. Like, obviously, Hance wasn't in Woe Is Me at that time, but he had been, and then he wasn't, and then he was. I can't remember the exact permutations of the history of his history with the band, but Hance is always someone that I've really connected with at a really fundamental human level. Like, we got to do, a Pierce the Veil tour in the UK and Europe with Woe Is Me and with Hance, and we just bonded and always kind of have stayed in touch through the ups and downs of each of our careers and lives outside of music. And so it was really important to kind of include him. There are a handful of other people I reached out to. It was important that for this whole project, I didn't want to work with people just because they were good at what they did. I wanted to work with people that I had a personal connection to, that I retained a personal connection to through some point of our career. So, Tom, I guess, was a latter point, because it was, he was one of the people who encouraged me to actually do this. Because I'd had a chat with him at what turned out to be my second last show with Hands Like Houses. And I'd kind of told him, I'm trying to make this happen. And because he had a really strong connection to the record, he was like, dude, you should absolutely do that. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And I said, look, let me get to it first. Let me start it, and then I'll hit you up. So that was kind of how that friendship kind of started. And he's obviously contributed a lot in terms of like the character modeling for the art. He was a sounding board, like when I was trying to mix it myself rather than outsourcing the mixing to Alex Prieto. I got a long way, and I got it, but it wasn't capturing the magic for him. And that's where I was like, I think I need to go find someone that's actually a pro at this. So that's, those relationships came through. There were a couple of, guest features that didn't quite come through for varying reasons. It could have been people politely telling me thanks but no thanks, but kind of said, busy doing this or busy doing that. I don't know if it's irresponsible for me to kind of say some of the people, like, but yeah, I asked Vic from Pierce the Veil, because we've kept in touch as well, and he's just been flat out with everything they're doing, so fair call. And we are still mates, and we still chat every now and then about the dad life, but asked him about featuring on Antarctica, so that's kind of like something cool that would have been, different time and place would have been amazing, but that's all good. Marcus from North Lane, I've had a connection with, like, before he was in North Lane. Was kind of keen to see if that could happen. Michael from formerly being as an Ocean and Heart of Gold. We toured together as his first band, The Elijah, from the UK in like 2010, before we'd even had the album out. Like, I think we had 2 songs, and they invited us to tour with them in Europe, which was really cool. And we've always kind of stayed in touch. Yeah, I think there were a couple of other people I kind of just gently nudged about it, but yeah, like I said, the personal connections were the key. I didn't need to have guest features. Line Skin, for example, like it was really important for me to do that one myself. I think that's an obvious question for folks that are tangentially like, oh, why didn't you get Johnny? And I've got time for Johnny as a friend. Like, we've had a good friendship over the years. We don't speak often. It's been a few years since we've chatted, but I've got time for him personally. But I think he's a hard man to platform. I think it would be, especially when his actions through just his past has hurt a lot of people close to me, professionally and personally. It's not a rejection of Johnny as a person. It's like I do support him, and I'm actually really glad to hear kind of the growth that he's had in himself and in what he's done kind of personally in more recent years. So glad to see that. But yeah, I think just doing that song myself without the other two was really important. I didn't really kind of form a relation. Like Maddie recorded on like Maddie Mullins when it was on Watchmaker. We did a few tours together. He's a nice guy. I just never kind of clicked with him at a personal level. Like it just not my kind of person and vice versa. And that's okay. I just felt like it was more important to kind of have someone that I had a connection with, you know what I mean? Just rather than just being on the record. So it was kind of he was on the record because of he just happened to be coming through Florida with Memphis Mayfire playing a tour. And I still chat to Jake every now and then. It's not that I'm disconnected from that side. It just felt like, yeah, it's just what felt right,
Yeah, fair enough. And so you mentioned, so did Tom do all the work for the project?
Tom did the character modeling. So he
Okay.
kind of did some Blender models, and then we brought those into Unreal, and then Bahador kind of took it the last mile to kind of the artwork renders. And then I had a friend named Anth, who is just local to me, around the corner. And he's just a friend who's a graphic designer, and I just needed some help kind of like laying things out a little bit. And then I kind of, again, like he got busy. So I kind of picked up the last mile again. It's been very much asking friends to do things, not because like I don't want to be I never wanted to be an act that ran on favors. Like I think my old band used to run on, I used to say, oh, we run on fumes and favors, which really is not a healthy way to run a business. So it's just like asking friends, hey, have you got some time? Would you be willing to do this as a mate? And if I can, if everything comes good, then I want to be able to do nice things for my friends. If we do kind of break even and make a few dollars, then I'd like to, do something nice for my friends. So yeah, just meant a lot of kind of picking up and putting down, kind of getting a little bit some of the way just to kind of help it get some momentum and then kind of carry it ourselves. So yeah.
Obviously, there's a pretty clear difference between the original and the re-recording being the
Sure.
track list. So what was kind of your thought process in rearranging the track list?
Um, I think I just wanted to be different. Not because there was anything wrong with the original flow, but I think I had an extra track to work in, so that was always going to be a question of like, well, where does that go? Vinyl was very much part of the conversation when I was figuring out the track list. Like I had all the songs ready, but I was like, in touch with the Breakthrough Records guys, kind of at the same sort of time as I was figuring out track list, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna engineer this for vinyl. I want the vinyl, like the listening experience of like playing the vinyl front to back, side to side. I wanted that to feel like a really tangible and special experience. So kind of, I wanted it to feel like two halves. I kind of asked my fan base community, whatever you want to call it, what order would you do? Like set up some playlists and send me your playlist of the songs, both the remade ones that are out already and then just the original songs, and kind of put them in a playlist and show me your playlist. I want to see how it goes. And there was some kind of themes that emerged through there about like what songs should start and open. I said like, I want this to be on vinyl, so I need a clear side A and side B. But I don't, I want them both to be as good as each other. And just think about like what songs flow together, like lyrically or emotively, or how does it create a journey, and just share it to me. And I kind of looked through about probably 30 or 40 different playlists that people sent through. And yeah, I just felt like there were songs to open with, there were songs to close with, and then there were songs that kind of did something special in between. Like, Watchmaker and 100 were very consistently in kind of the middle of the back half for a lot of people. Starving to Death in the Belly of a Whale and Don't Look Now I'm Being Followed Act Normal. They were both quite often the second song. Like they're like, what I mean? Antarctica and Cruel Men are both like the introductions for each side, and then you want to kind of something that just carries the energy and kind of, you know what I mean? It's like something that hits hard and kind of opens up the record, and so those all made sense. And then, you know, 3 and 4 is often like your key singles on an album, because, you know, we wanted to use the same track listing for streaming as well. So Lion Skin and Clown in His Pipe just felt like the big ones, especially with Tom's involvement on Clown. You know, This Ain't a Place for Animals was a big one, so stuck that as like a, you know, carry strong into the end of side A, and then close out side A with The Soul, which is a song that was always at the end of the record in the original, and it was always a sleeper favorite of mine. So I wanted to kind of bring that up in the track list so that it got a bit more time, because it's probably like that song is for me what leaned into Unimagine. Like that's the bridge song that kind of set up for the sound of Unimagine. And so while it was cool that it ended that, I wanted it to be a feature. So that went there, and then, you know, the back half was just about just playing the starts and the ends of the songs for myself, because, you know, it kind of, once I got past the themes, there were still a few things that needed to be fit together. So I literally just cut the first 10 seconds and the last 10 seconds off each song and just stuck them together in different orders. I'm like, okay, that feels good. That's how we got the track listing, just to be different, just to take people on a new journey with the same songs. Like the goal was fresh but familiar, and this was a way to kind of be fresh but familiar.
So you didn't even have, when you first released Cruel Men and Lion Skin, you didn't even have the track list. That came as you were like figuring it out.
That came like what 3 months ago, not even 2 months ago, when we were just settling it all. And like literally when I was doing the artwork was when I finalized, like the first draft of the artwork didn't have the track list because I still hadn't decided yet.
Cool, you got the community involved though.
Yeah. I mean, you got to listen to people. Like, you know, I know your primary outlet is Twitter, the social platform normally known as Twitter. I'm not going to gratify its owner or new name.
No, we don't need to.
But like, comments on the internet are not community.
Right.
But community matters. You got to listen to your community. That's something that I felt like the other guys in Hands would always have great conversations with individuals, but they'd have conversations with individuals in like live contexts, and kind of, I was the one who kind of read the comments, you know, sometimes took them a little too personally. Other times I probably didn't react as graciously as I could have, but, you know, at the same time, I don't care. Like, some people are dicks, and I'm not gonna pander to dicks. So fair enough. And I've been called a dick before for that reason. I'm like, whatever. It's like, it's not, I'm not that guy, but whatever. So what you need to say. Yeah, you got to listen to people, listen to your community, because at the end of the day, your community is what creates like the foundation for a fan base. It's the groundswell. It's the people that get the vision the closest. You know, there's a big tangent I could go on about this whole music methodology I follow that's kind of loosely based on a book that a friend wrote, and then I kind of have built that out in my own head, and like research I did through COVID into like, you know, music user journeys and all that sort of stuff. And there's this whole model. Your cult fans are the ones who kind of help other people up the hill towards the vision, basically. And so you got to listen to your community, you got to engage with them, and make it meaningful, because it is an exchange of mutual benefit. Like, I create something for my reasons and my vision, but if I want to commercialize that, then I need to have that relationship where I can actually connect with like why it matters to people. Like, why do they want to spend money on it? Why do they want to go out and buy a, you know, $150 vinyl, like, bit of wax that has the song on it? Like that's not a small thing to do, but like, why, like what's going to make someone care enough, and how to do that authentically instead of cynically. I think it's always been really important, and something I've always tried to do, especially the more I've come to understand that relationship over the years, is to just, you know, be available, be transparent, and be authentically yourself in that moment. It's not about pleasing everyone on the internet, because you're not going to. It's just about find your people and make something that works for everyone, and that makes everyone feel good and allows it to be sustained.
Actually, continuing on with some of the changes, I did notice that 100 has some additional lyrics.
Yeah.
Like in the added section in the first verse and in the bridge, you actually changed some of the lyrics. So why'd you do that?
That song has always been my least favorite from that record.
Really?
And not, yeah, and that hurts people's feelings sometimes, and I get it. But it always felt unfinished for me. And that's why I just always felt uncomfortable about it. Because there are a few lyrics in there that were just half thoughts. even from the demo that was mislabeled as Cruel Men, Cowards and Liars, in that demo, there are slightly longer verses where it kind of, I got to explore the idea a little bit more, but I was still, like, that was one of the first songs I wrote with So Long Safety that became Hands Like Houses. Like, that was the first song I wrote when I joined the band that really went anywhere. And I think I was trying to write a certain type of song, and I was still figuring out what I was doing. And so there were a lot of like half thoughts, and like I didn't know how to continue the thought or tell the story yet in that space, because I was still figuring out what the space was. And so we took that demo that was already a bit kind of undercooked into the studio, and then, you know, Cam made some producer edits of just like, oh, that verse is a bit long, let's cut it shorter, and let's cut it shorter. And then you've got this big long outro bridge that just ends the song. We need to come back to the chorus. So everything kind of got clipped from, and took something that felt undercooked and then gave kind of what for me felt like a half serving of it. So it's just like suddenly it's just a much less of the song that I wanted it to be and less of the vision than it started. You know what I mean? Like it's always felt a bit icky for that reason. And so I thought, look, I don't need to change this, but I want to see if I can, like, I couldn't write another Ground Dweller. I couldn't even write another Ground Dweller song if I tried at this point. I think the way that I've grown in my creative things, like, it would just always feel either forced. It couldn't feel authentic, I don't think, because it would feel forced. It would feel like I'm trying to do things a certain way instead of just doing things the way that I do them. You know, that's how it came out in the first place. I just did things the way that I knew how to do it at the time, and now I know better of how to do things. And it's not to say better than what it was. It's just, you know, different influences, different kind of method and process. People get older. Theoretically wiser. Debatable. So I wanted to take a crack at, like, could I just rewrite the bits and finish those thoughts? And so that first verse, I was like, I can't in the amount of time that I have, but if I extend that verse to the original length, it just gives me a little bit more. And what am I trying to say here? It's kind of like that uneasiness between, like, does this person feel the same way about me that I do about them in a complicated situation? That was kind of the, I don't know, fundamental of that song. And so, yeah, you know, that idea of just like, it was about leaning close, like being really up close with someone and just not knowing what to do next. And yeah, so it just being able to lean in that, you know, kind of like, you know, the kinds of tale that we could tell in dim lit cinematic moments, the kind that, like, you know what I mean? Those things of like, what if, and so leaning into that. And then the chorus, like leaning into the bridge, what was the original lyric? It was like, please don't remind me of reality now. Like, that was always the entry point to, and that was the part that worked for me. But it must have been days by now. My God, it must have been days. Days since what? Days till what? What happens in days? Why? It was a placeholder thing that I just scribbled down because, like, I was playing with the melody and I wrote these lyrics down. I'm like, I'll change these. I never came up with something better, and then it just, like, and to be honest, there was a point I wanted to scrap the whole thing because I couldn't make it work, and then I was like, no, keep it. Like, people liked it. We had a friendship group at the time that was kind of our sounding board for demos, and people liked it. They liked that part. It was all dancey and trancey and whatever the fuck you want to do. It just stuck, even though I hadn't finished it, and that always bugged me. So I just, having had time and not thinking about that for a decade and a half in between. Shit, what is it? What even is it now? Now I'm confused.
The bridge lyric is why couldn't we stay? And then you
Yep.
added the lyric in the outro, hold your tongue, honey. At the
I
very
think that was
end.
always there.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so. The fade out may fade out differently, but
Yeah, it might fade out differently, that's it. But yeah, you definitely changed the bridge to why couldn't we stay? I forget what the original
yeah,
lyric was.
that's gonna bug me that now that I just can't
Here,
recall it to
I
mind.
got it.
I've answered this question a few times, but let me just pull up my lyrics because this is gonna really piss me off, and I'm gonna get stuck on it.
The original lyric was that it must have been days. I think it was.
No, so I've been pretending this can't go wrong. Like, I've been pretending for so damn long, or something was the original.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Pretending for so long now. My God, I couldn't. Yeah, so I've been pretending this can't go wrong.
Yeah.
My God. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I feel better now. I'm satisfied. I've figured out what I was forgetting. We're good. Continue.
So, Ladders on Tables is specific to this project. Like, you're not gonna continue dropping music under this moniker.
No, this is not. This, like, Ladders on Tables is not about new music. It never was. I think I'd pick a better band name if that was the plan. But I don't know. I just felt like it was more palatable. if I started a new band and then made an old record under that new band, I think it just something it wouldn't feel authentic about that. Like I'd rather have a project for the vision and then have something else after that. And like, not gonna lie, that's gonna be a tough thing when we start the new thing and launch it. Like, I've then got to bring an audience that I only just managed to bring across from my old thing. I've now got to translate them to someone else. Like, that's gonna suck, and I'm probably, it's gonna be starting again. That feels like the right thing to do. So, this project doesn't disappear. I guess it just goes on like indefinite, potentially permanent hiatus. But it could be a vehicle to, I don't know if in a year or two's time I'm like, I feel like coming back to that. I could even just, I've done sing-alongs with old songs on my social media before. Like I've, done a few like just sing-throughs of like one take sort of vocal performances. And that's something that probably would make sense now in the context of this if I come back to that once I'm actually done with the record. But it's a moment in time. Music is only ever an artifact of a moment in time. And I think sometimes you kill a thing by trying to keep it alive longer than you should. You know what I mean? People ask like, are you going to remake Unimagine or Dissonance? They don't really ask if you're going to remake Anon or the self-titled EP. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I love those for their own reasons, but I get it. It's okay. Yeah. Anyway. People, like
It's a good
Unimagine, I
record.
think is probably I think the album that people have the strongest emotional connection to, and to a lesser degree, Dissonance is probably not that far behind that. And look, I'd love to, but given the amount of work that has gone into this, like even though I've got the workflows and the things in place, like it's like because I've got to recreate it from scratch because the original recordings, including what went onto tape, digitally speaking, for that record, that belongs to the record label in perpetuity. We don't own the master recordings, to my knowledge. And if we did, it kind of also belongs to the band. Like collectively, we own the compositions, which is like the songs, but the recordings of those songs belong either to us or the label, and the licensing of those recordings as a finished product is definitely the label's. So that's why I had to remake this album literally from scratch. Like there is not a sound on there that came from that record because those are all gone. They were lost a long time ago. So yeah, I think the closest thing is there's a cassette tape. This has the intro of Antarctica on it. I don't know if it still plays because my tape machine chewed it up when I tried to get it out recently, but I did manage to get the recording back off it. This has a few loops of the Antarctica intro with like differing amounts of like drive and distortion. And so I used one of the other ones that wasn't the, that's probably the closest thing to reusing something from that record. But yeah, anyway, sorry, that was a big tangent. Remaking the later albums, I guess the mix of those has held up a little bit better over time because it was more of like a classic analog recording path rather than the in-the-box digital stuff that Grundwiller was. Because those were more like while they were still in the box, there was a lot more analog processing and mixing that went into that gave it, I guess, a more timeless sort of sound. So it would feel less, I don't know, like a improvement to do those records again. I'm not close to it, but I also don't want to be a guy that tries to live in the past. Like,
yeah,
I'm honoring it here. This is about honoring and reflecting on, and I guess reclaiming the past, given the circumstances. Like, I'm not reclaiming it to go and live there. I don't want to be that guy in the back of the bar trying to tell everyone he used to be famous. Like, fuck that. That's gross. You know what I mean? For me, this is about celebrating, acknowledging, reclaiming, and moving forward, moving on, without the ickiness of what's happened in the last few years for me. And it's a turning page moment, and that's what it's meant to be, and no more than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if you didn't have, obviously you didn't have any of the stems or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
how did you go about like re-recording it, like the guitar parts, all of that? Like, did you just listen? Do you have to just
Yeah.
by ear?
Yes and no. So there were three kind of ways I approached it. One was I had demos on my iPod Classic that
Still
still
got it,
works, thank God.
eh?
That were some of them were just tracks and click, or like just the rhythm guitars. So it just let me kind of hear it in a bit more detail. I use AI stem separation tools to kind of split out the different stems, just so I could kind of, hear the guitar without the vocal, because the vocal kind of distracts you from the guitar, or like the keyboards without the guitars and drums, because then you can actually hear what's going on. I also had like a small handful of like tracks only stems from like my email account. Like I emailed it to the band from my personal account instead of from the band account by accident, because we used to use the band email to just email ourselves, and that was how we just stored our shit before Dropbox, Google Drive, and that were a thing. So I managed to find a couple that I actually sent to or from my personal account, that had, a tracks only demo. But yeah, that's like, it was just listening. I had tabs on a program called Tabit, which only runs on Windows XP. So I have my dad's old
Wow.
Toshiba laptop that I was using for a while. That was like a 2002 model laptop that I inherited and kept. When he didn't need it anymore for work, he upgraded. The sound card in that didn't work though, so I was like literally like sight reading it, or like saving MIDIs out that I could then bring across, and then, you know what I mean. So like it was convoluted. Like if you ask like how did I remake the sound of the record, I was like, what instrument and what part of what song? I need specific time references, because like that was probably the most fun but equally shitty parts of the process, was like all the different keyboard sounds, because there's not a lot of consistencies. Like you've got vibraphone a lot, because that was one of the best sounding voices in Tabit for a part that was keyboard driven. So like that, and e-pianos, strings and all that sort of stuff, that's easy to kind of recreate, because you just get a string library and you can kind of hear the composition. So the strings in Spineless of like, that's all relatively easy. It's pizzicatos, it's string stabs, but it's more like, I think Watchmaker was probably the hardest song, because it was all like a lot of synth presets with just a bunch of effects put on, and I had to like reverse engineer like what effects I'd thrown on it, having no idea or intention of what to do at the time. I just like scroll through shit till it sounded cool. So yeah, that was one of the challenges, but it was fun, because it would, like, I'd spend weeks at a time, just whatever time I had, on the train to and from work. On my day job, I'd go in once a week to the office. It's a 1 hour train journey each way, so I'd just spend 2 hours a day just kind of trying to figure out the sounds. And songs would take me weeks at a time to just get all the keys down, all the drum programming done. And then, the guitar parts, we kind of had to listen by ear, and I had to think back to like, almost visualize Coops playing the lead parts. He has a very specific hand shape. He's got a really long ring finger. That was always something like a characteristic thing of his playing. So trying to figure out how to kind of replicate that, in not just because the way that, a traditional guitarist might play it is probably a little bit different, whereas Coops was very much a reach with his ring finger a lot, up with a very high, so all those little things that accidentally made the sound of the record, I had to like really intentionally undo the accident part and figure it out. And that was, yeah, fun. A lot of work. That's why it's taken 2 years to get it out from when I first started.
And then we did take a couple of questions from fans on Twitter.
Yeah.
But my last question for you, I don't want to keep you too long, but what's your next plans for new music, or your next project, if there's anything in the works?
Yeah. Yes, like we've started work on new music. I don't want to overload that comment, because it's going to be time. Like, I think, we have one song that I would love to finish and get out sooner than later as kind of a bookmark, and to kind of help help start the transplanting of that audience again. But at the end of the day, it's more important to get it right than done and out. So I think for us, it's kind of, we'll probably go quiet for a while, work on stuff. I'm actually having a baby in March, so that's going to be a big time impact for the front half of next year. So I'm hoping that there will be kind of time in between to kind of just put down some vocals and kind of let my team build around that. Like, it's Bahador and myself as the band, but how we pad that out with different collaborators remains to be seen. But yeah, we're trying to do one song now and see how it comes together in between all the chaos of putting out an album with all the merch and all the vinyl and all the logistics and the tour planning and the set list planning and the track prep and all that sort of stuff. Even just finishing up some of the visual stuff that we're trying to get out. Yeah, it's going to be a slow grind. So I don't want people kind of knocking at the door saying, "Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?" But yes, the goal was always like the point of Ladders on Tables was to lay the foundations from which to make new music. That was always the goal. That was always the purpose, and that's absolutely what we're moving forward with. But the new band's not going to look like anything I've done before in the sense of I don't want, like, I've got a family, I've got a day job, love my life, so I don't want to be throwing it away too easily, just to go and be on tour. Like, I don't know if I'll get to go overseas with the new project. I don't know if we'll do anything more than just fun shows, just a couple hundred people in Australia if we're lucky. That's what it may look like, and I'm okay with that too. But it's doing it for the sake of making music. It's not about trying to build a life from it, which is kind of freeing in a beautiful way.
I would like you to come to Canada. I never got a chance to see you guys when I was in high school, so that would be cool.
Yep.
But I know I'm on the
At this
complete
point
other
in time,
side.
Canada is probably more likely than the US for political and administrative reasons.
um, so yeah, I just got like a few questions or really some comments from your fans on Twitter. But Jared did want to ask if
Yeah.
you would ever be open to doing a reimagined type record or a collection of songs with the same treatment.
I mean, I think we covered kind of, I guess, the unimagined side, but in terms of the reimagined side of acoustic, like, in some capacities that may be more likely than something else. But yeah, I don't know. It's not my driving thing at the moment. I think I'm more likely to, do one song that didn't get done acoustically the first time around as part of an EP of other songs that are a bit more kind of acoustic or like earthy sounding. Like, I've got a couple of original songs that didn't really fit on anything, but I do want to do something with as some sort of epilogue. So it may be that I do a cover or two of an Old Hand song as an acoustic-ish thing, and then put that with some new songs, maybe.
This is actually a really good question because I'm curious too. What is your favorite Galleons or Valiant Heart songs? Not including the one you just did.
Damn it. Look, I think DeLorean's amazing. Like, they're just for the video alone. I admittedly haven't had the time to do a deep dive on Tom's back catalogue, which is horribly biased of me given our relationship, but we have both been so busy with what we are doing now
Yeah.
that I haven't had the time to do a deep dive. I've certainly put it on and played it and enjoyed it collectively. But yeah, there's something about that, like the chorus and like the pre-chorus and the chorus of DeLorean that is really special. Like, I think the visuals are amazing as well for Galleons. There are a couple of the new ones on the new, like, so I actually recorded group vocals with a friend for a majority of Hidden Realms.
Yeah.
So there's about four or five, maybe even six other songs that I'm gently, quietly, subtly featured on. But that's just as a group vocalist rather than a feature vocalist. And my friend Dave, kind of, who lives around the corner, just came around and we just sang the part as shitty good as we could to replicate a bunch of friends getting together, some of which that can't sing, singing together, and that's what gives a sound. So that was fun.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for Hidden Realms. I know they're kind of having some mixing fiascos at the moment, but
Tom is just incredibly particular about his vision, and I back it. It was a little even with Thalassa, there was a few things I was like, "Oh, I feel like this should change," but he was really attached to it, and that's okay. Like, it is his thing, and if an artist can't do that, then fuck being an artist. But yeah, I know Tom's got a really, really high like attention to detail, which is what makes him brilliant at what he does, and it'll all be for the best. I back it. Like, Thalassa came a long way because he's trying to do something slightly different. I think he's pushed his envelope with this record, and so kind of, even though he's working with the same people, like kind of pushing them along with him to take it two steps forward without leaving anything behind. And I think that's where it's getting caught at the moment. But I know it's going to come good. I mean, he's just busy living life as well. He's just been to Japan, hanging with Phil from Floyer, and just seeing Japan because it's a great place to be. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I think it was the Galleon's record, Violent Delights, was coming out, and he was working on uh, the Dungeon Dweller video until like the night before he posted it. It's like the one with the PS1
Yeah, okay.
graphics and all that, like just down to the wire, crazy.
Yeah.
um, and I'm gonna send you off with this little comment, JC. No question, but he did want me to let you know that Unimagined is a timeless classic, an incredible body of work for its time.
Thank you. I'm still really proud of it. There are so many things I could say about like the timeline of that record because Ground Dweller was the thing that introduced us, but Unimagined was the thing that kind of took us to being a real band. I think it just the fact that we were able to release them a year apart when realistically they were written like 3 years apart. I think that just really capitalized momentum for us at the time, and I think Unimagined I'd kind of figured out what sort of songs I enjoyed writing and singing, and I think it just I think we realized we didn't have to be a heavy or technical or proggy band. Like I think we were trying to do all these things that we felt we needed to do to fit the scene, and then it's kind of like the things that people latched onto were actually the things that were a bit more subtle, that were a bit more nuanced, that were a bit more emotively driven. And so we just leaned into that, and it just came out as kind of this pure attempt, an expression of who we were at the time, what we were trying to do, but actually realizing, hey, we can actually back ourselves here. We can be ourselves instead of trying to shape ourselves to what we thought we needed to be, and that was really freeing. And I think that that's quite what came through. So, I'm still always immensely proud of that record and all of them for their own reasons. But yeah, I'm really grateful for the connection people have with it for sure.
My personal favorite record from you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, the first three. I mean, like Anon. I feel like more than most for some reason. Like,
Yeah.
I don't get. I don't
There's a
get
whole
this.
conversation I could have about why that doesn't connect for people, and that's okay. Like, I think we marketed it wrong. I think we needed a kind of I think we led people astray with Drift because I think we were trying to lean into like a heavy kind of Deftones influenced, but still kind of very vibey, like kind of alternative record that kind of, I think Anon was like it was a hop, skip, and a jump instead of a step. And I think that that's what threw people, especially because Drift was so heavy, but Drift was supposed to be the heavy end of a spectrum coming into what was next. But then we got to the studio, and I think, Colin, who's now drumming for Linkin Park, was just like, sat the band down and was just like, look, what record do you want to make? Because I don't think you want to make the record you're telling me you want to make. Because I think it didn't feel authentic. And for the guys, and I mean, this conversation with them, I was still on my honeymoon, so I got in 2 weeks later, and the decision had been made, and I had a, completely different album to write than I thought I did. So that was a bit of a whirlwind. But yeah, long story short, I think we just set the wrong expectations, and I think that that's what burned people rather than what it was at face value. So yeah,
Dissonance was a lot heavier than any of your previous works too, like riff wise and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is what it is. But I think Kingdom Come is, top of your catalog. But that's just me.
All right, cool. I appreciate that. It's a cool song.
All right, man. I won't keep you too long. I know you got some stuff to do. So,
yeah, that's okay though.
I appreciate
it's been lovely, and happy to do this again sometime. Even if it's a case of if there are extra questions you kind of wanted to shoot through as like an email, and I can kind of just text them back to you or.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate
Whatever.
you taking the time to sit down with me. It's really nice.
Yeah, of course.